Friends, while everyone is still obsessing over AI stealing jobs and arguing about EVs taking market share, Elon Musk, probably the most dangerous gambler on this planet, has quietly shoved his chips to the center of the table. This time he's not betting on cars, not rockets. He's betting on what I can only call the source code of God. He's saying flat out that Neuralink will enter mass production in 2026. Do you hear what's hiding inside that word, mass production? If this stays in a lab, it's science. If it's used by a few hundred people, it's a medical device. But the second Musk uses an industrial word, mass production, to describe a piece of neurosurgery, the nature of the game changes. That means upgrading the brain won't be a privilege from sci-fi novels anymore. It becomes a standardized manufacturing process like building iPhones. This isn't treatment. This is a forced upgrade for the human species. And Musk's own words tell you exactly how he sees it. He said, "I'm now confident it's very likely we can restore full body functionality." Notice that word, full. In medicine, doctors don't promise full, they can't. Only engineers talk like that when they're rewriting an operating system and saying, "We're covering all functions." In Musk's eyes, humans aren't fragile lives to protect anymore. We're wet hardware waiting to be flashed. And I know what you're thinking. Here we go again. Musk is selling a dream. I saw that monkey playing games video. It's whatever. If your brain is still stuck on monkey plays games, you're already disconnected from the current version of reality. So let me bring you someone you probably haven't really processed, Pollard Smith, Neuralink's third subject. He's not a superhero. He's a late-stage ALS patient. In the old rules of the world, he was basically sentenced already, full paralysis, barely able to move, locked inside a collapsing body. But after Neuralink, what happened to him isn't recovery. It's an escape. He didn't move a hand. He didn't move a mouth. He didn't even rely on eye movement. He moved one thing, intent. He became the world's first thought-based editor. Picture this, he's lying outside on a balcony, in the sun, just thinking, and he's dragging timelines, adding subtitles, rendering exports inside professional video editing software. No mouse, no keyboard, just brain signals. And here's the part that hits like a punch, it's not merely possible. It can be faster than you, because your hand still runs through biological wiring. It has delay. It has friction. His intention goes straight through clean signal, direct link. Now the scarier part, gaming. Older brain-computer interfaces still leaned on eye tracking. You had to stare, focus, calibrate. Pollard doesn't need that anymore. Even with his eyes closed, even when bright light makes eye controls fail, he can still drift corners in Mario Kart using pure intention. And destroy able-bodied people sitting next to him. Do you get it now? This isn't just helping disabled people get back to normal. This is showing humanity a new permission level, when consciousness can bypass the body and directly control the digital world. Pollard isn't a patient anymore. He's a prototype, a first-generation cyber-human. And the reason Musk dares to say 2026 mass production is simple. Because this card has already survived a brutal stress test. Pollard Smith is living proof that someone can walk out of the carbon prison while still alive. But here's the real question. Putting a chip in a monkey's head is one thing. Putting a chip into millions, tens of millions of human heads, that's a completely different universe. The brain is the most delicate no-go zone in the human body. One mistake and you're talking paralysis, brain bleed, death. So if Musk is serious about mass production, a chip is not enough. He has to solve the most overlooked yet most fatal physical bottleneck. How do you safely insert 1024 electrodes into living brain tissue? Because if this depends on a surgeon's hands, it will never scale. So Musk did something that should make every neurosurgeon feel cold down their spine. He handed the scalpel to a robot. If you can't solve how to install it, then 2026 mass production is a joke. Most people's fear around brain-computer interfaces comes down to two words, open skull. In our subconscious, touching the brain feels like stepping into forbidden territory. Bandages, ICU, disability risk, life-changing consequences. If Neuralink requires a traditional surgery and exhausted senior doctor under a microscope for 10 hours, this will never become mainstream. It becomes a billionaire's longevity toy. Musk is up against a physics trap. Neuralink's N1 has 1024 electrodes across 64 threads. Let me translate that into something your body understands. Those threads are thinner than a human hair by an insane margin. And those contact points have to be placed at precise depth, in precise brain regions. And here's the nightmare part. Your brain is not a still piece of jelly. It's a soft, living structure packed with blood vessels like a minefield. Miss by a micron, puncture a microvessel, and you can trigger a brain bleed that could erase someone on the spot. So let me ask you, what surgeon's hand on earth is that steady? None. Human biology has limits. Hands shake, eyes tire, focus breaks. Doing this by hand is like standing on top of a skyscraper and trying to hook an ant on the street with a fishing line. It's not hard. It's lethal. That's nature's firewall, the creator's final lock on the human brain. If you can't break that lock, then digital immortality and mind upload are fantasy. So Musk's solution isn't train better doctors. It's remove doctors from the loop. He took the manufacturing logic from Tesla factories and dragged it straight into the operating room. He built the R1 surgical robot. And let me be very clear. This is not just a medical device. It's a biological lithography machine. It has eyes like a hawk, high precision cameras and sensors mapping blood vessels in real time. And it has hands like a machine god, needles moving with millisecond timing, dodging vessels, planting those threads into the cortex like embroidery. No full anesthesia, minimal bleeding. Musk even gave it a name that exposes the entire strategy, a neural sewing machine. Listen to that word. A sewing machine is standardized, efficient, tireless. It means the future implant won't feel like a surgery. It'll feel like a procedure step, like a factory station. Tap, 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 and your brain is online. But even that isn't the deepest weapon. The real assassin move is something Musk mentioned almost casually, dura penetration. Don't underestimate that membrane. The dura mater is your brain's last armor, tough like leather. Traditionally, to place electrodes, surgeons cut it open. That's like removing your roof. Risk skyrockets. Infection risk rises. Recovery takes longer. That's why brain surgery terrifies normal people. But Musk's path is different. Don't cut it. The robot's needle is sharp enough, controlled enough to pass through without tearing. In medicine, that's a major leap. It takes a terrifying operation and collapses it into something closer to a minimally invasive outpatient procedure. Think about LASIK. 20 years ago, the idea of cutting your eye sounded insane. Now it's a quick clinic appointment. Musk wants LASIK but for the brain. And the moment open skull psychologically becomes a procedure, that final mental barrier breaks. Now look back at that 2026 timeline again. Does it still sound like pure hype? Musk isn't just talking. He's describing an industrial ramp. Right now, Neuralink has only a handful of subjects, 12. Last I checked in your framing, and people dismiss it as research. But in Musk's language, that's the end of prototype validation. Once the robot workflow and minimally invasive approach are locked, the next step is what Tesla has done 1,000 times. Production scaling. And notice what he's hiring for. Not doctors, manufacturing engineers. Microfabrication engineers. That tells you everything. His center of gravity has already shifted from lab discovery to factory replication. He's building an evolutionary assembly line that can produce millions of chips and complete thousands of installs per day. And that is what terrifies Wall Street, medical giants, and ethicists. Because if this only serves the richest 1%, it's a luxury. But if it drops in cost like a Model 3, if it becomes accessible to tens of millions of blind people, spinal injury patients, and eventually billions of normal people who want enhancement, then it becomes oxygen. And once the first fully automated implant line turns on, humans enter version update speed. The cortex we took millions of years to evolve could suddenly get bandwidth expansion by orders of magnitude through a robot needle. That is not progress. That is acceleration. Musk is stealing root access from the safe, photocopying it, and preparing to hand it out at scale. Now at this point, chip, surgery, safety, the physical gate. In Musk's first principles world, it's being flattened. The door is getting forced open. But you think that's the climax? No, that's just the installation tutorial. Because the real question isn't how do we plug in? It's what happens after we're plugged in. Do you think this is just thought gaming and texting? That's tiny. Musk's real ambition is to rewrite the body's drivers. Make the blind see light they were never meant to see. Make the paralyzed run even with severed nerves. Prove the body is just a replaceable shell, a piece of hardware you patch, swap, and upgrade. Ready for the part that sounds like religion? The miracles blind people seeing, the crippled walking are about to become engineering outputs. And now we hit two applications that look like medical terms, but are actually civilization rewriting weapons. Blind sight and spinal cord bridging. Delete the soft words from your mind. Treatment, recovery, medical device. In Silicon Valley logic, the blind and paralyzed aren't patients. They're users with broken interfaces. Like a desktop tower that works but the monitor cable is dead, the keyboard port is broken. Old medicine tries to repair the broken cable. Musk's logic is, forget the old cable. We root around it. We bypass biology. That's why it feels like a miracle. So here's the core principle, simple enough to break your worldview. Your eyes don't see. Your brain sees. Eyes are just biological cameras converting photons to electrical signals. The optic nerve is just a data cable. The visual cortex is the GPU that renders reality. For most blind people, the cortex is intact. What's broken is the camera or the cable. So what does Neuralink do? It plugs an N1 chip into the visual cortex and injects signals the brain can interpret. Meaning someone born without functional eyes, someone who never saw light, could still see if the brain tissue is alive. That's beyond medicine. That's architecture. And here's where it gets even darker, because once the signal is artificial, why stop at visible light? Humans can only see a narrow band of the spectrum. That's a limitation built into our biological sensors. But if we're feeding data directly into the cortex, we can push infrared, ultraviolet, thermal imaging, even radar-like depth data, as long as we write the drivers and train the brain to interpret it. So the first blind sight users might not just regain vision. They might surpass it. Night vision, heat vision, pattern detection. At that point, who is disabled? That's not recovery. That's sensory ascension. Musk takes sight out of God's hands and makes it a selectable feature. And your framing says by 2026, this begins at scale. Tens of millions of people become the first wave of sensory-enhanced humans. Now spinal bridging. If blind sight is repairing input, spinal bridging is rebuilding output. This is the real meaning behind restore full body functionality. Paralysis is not your legs are broken. Paralysis is the CPU sends walk but the main cable is severed, so the signal never reaches the motor hardware. Your brain works. Your legs may work, but you're locked out. Doctors tried to reattach nerves, regrow tissue slow, fragile, unpredictable. Musk uses brute engineering again. Cable is broken, don't fix it. Build a Wi-Fi bridge. Brain chip captures the intention. A second interface below the injury receives it. The signal jumps over the dead zone and stimulates muscles. That's not healing. That's installing a backup digital nervous system. It's a high-speed rail built next to a collapsed road. And once that exists, it doesn't stop at spinal injuries. Anything that is fundamentally signal transmission failure starts to become addressable at the physical layer. Movement disorders, certain neurological conditions, even seizure control in future pathways. You feel the cold yet? Eyes can become replaceable cameras. Limbs become controllable peripherals. Spines become reroutable buses. Once Musk snaps those pieces together, the terrifying conclusion appears. In this architecture, almost the entire body becomes modular hardware. And the only sacred core is a few millimeters of wet cortex. That's what this really is. It forces humanity out of our comfortable philosophy, mind and body as one, and breaks us down into a host machine and attached devices. And this destroys the boundary between disabled and able-bodied. In Neuralink's world, there are no disabled people. There are users waiting for upgrades. And there are no truly able-bodied people either, because by industrial standards, your natural body may be full of performance bottlenecks. Your eyes can't see infrared, outdated. Your legs can't run like a predator, replaceable. That's the start of a new kind of evolution. Old evolution was random mutation and natural selection over millions of years, God's tempo. New evolution is FDA approvals, chip fabrication nodes, and Musk's ramp speed. The engineer's tempo. When the first mass-produced implants go into millions of humans, we won't be watching patients get cured. We'll be watching the first generation of semi-mechanical humans appear, and everyone else still proudly living in their factory default bodies may quietly become the real limited ones. This isn't just a medical headline. It's a productivity reset, a societal reset. Insurance, education, jobs, wealth paths, everything starts updating. And because this is bigger than most people can process in real time, I put together a guide called the Silicon Evolution Survival Manual. It breaks down the key coordinates of this shift, what actually matters, what's noise, and what rules change when enhancement becomes an industrial option. I've dropped it in the comments, click to grab it. Now miracles have arrived. The blind may see, the paralyzed may walk, but it's still the beginning. Because if eyes can be replaced, limbs can be replaced, spinal signals can be bridged, then there's one last plank on the ship of Theseus that hasn't been touched yet. Consciousness itself. What happens when N1 doesn't just transmit movement commands? What happens when it can transmit memory, emotion, personality? What happens when the probe in your brain isn't meant to patch the body, but to back up the thing we used to call the soul out of a decaying biological shell? That's Musk's endgame. That's the real forbidden zone. And that's where we have to go next. Digital immortality. Get ready, because at that point, it's not about repairing the ship. It's about abandoning the ship. Musk threw out the phrase that makes every carbon-based creature feel short of breath: digital immortality. This is not pure science fiction. When Neuralink bandwidth goes from thousands of bits per second to gigabits and beyond, quantity becomes quality. N1 today transmits motion signals and sensory signals, but signal is signal. Memory is signal. Emotion is signal. Your identity is a complex storm of electrochemical signal. If bandwidth becomes massive and decoding becomes powerful enough, one day you can mirror that pattern to the cloud. And then what is the body? A disposable container. A temporary shell that ages, fails, rots. The you stored on servers, the you that can be downloaded into any mechanical body, becomes the part that doesn't die. That's the species fork. Humanity splits into two. One group clings to default biology and slowly decays in the physical world. The other merges with Neuralink, uploads, and lives in silicon dimensions with essentially unlimited compute and lifespan. It sounds intoxicating. But listen, if you've spent any time watching financial markets, you know one brutal truth. The road to paradise is paved with corpses. And for normal people in 2026, the biggest risk is not whether you get immortality. It's whether you survive long enough to reach the era where it's actually accessible. So let's come back down to earth. Money. If Neuralink is this powerful and mass production is coming, should you sell everything and go all in on brain interface stocks? If that thought even crosses your mind, you're exactly the kind of person who gets vaporized early in every tech revolution. Because this stage is what institutions call the adoption phase. The story is sexy. The earnings are ugly. Right now, the sector is mostly prototypes, approvals, timelines, trials. It's like the internet in 2000, crypto in 2017. Yes, there will be an Amazon. There will be a winner. But before the winner emerges, 99% of companies die in the dark before dawn. Institutions don't marry this trade. They probe it, small positions, strict risk control, quick exits if the tape turns. Retail does the opposite. Here's Musk and throws rent money, down payment money, retirement money into one basket. That mismatch is how you get destroyed. From a dozen subjects to tens of millions, you're crossing years of approvals, trial risks, black swans, failures, shutdowns. That can take 5 years, 10 years longer. And if you get wiped out in the next big market drawdown, you permanently lose your ticket to the future you're dreaming about. So the highest level survival rule here isn't greed. It's endurance. If this truly becomes destiny level tech, the long runway remains enormous. The key is to stay alive long enough to participate. And that brings me to the most important investment for normal people, more important than any stock, any house, any portfolio: your body. Musk said something that most media skipped, but to me it's the most practical message in the whole story. Technology's acceleration is starting to outpace human aging. It's a race. On one side is entropy aging, your body breaking down slowly. On the other side is a group of engineers building a high-speed train, trying to reach you before you collapse. If your body breaks in 2030, if your arteries clog in 2035, Then even if digital immortality becomes cheap in 2040, you won't be there. You'll be that person dying at the ambulance door while the cure is sitting inside. That is the cruelty of lifespan depreciation. So starting now, don't sacrifice health for short-term noise. Stop trading sleep for doom scrolling. Move, train, eat like your future depends on it, because it does. In an era where the singularity is approaching, health is no longer just living longer. Health is your admission ticket into the next species. Every extra year you buy yourself increases the probability you reach the cost collapse phase the moment the miracle becomes normal. That's the compounding of survival. Let me leave you with this. 2026 is shaping up to be a historical dividing line. Musk is taking a needle thin enough to pierce the biological firewall between carbon and silicon. Once that door is open, it never fully closes again. We are unbelievably lucky and unbelievably terrified. We might be the last generation of humans that must die, or the first generation that doesn't. That uncertainty is the magic of this era and also its greatest danger. Don't let your body die the night before the miracle. Don't let your account go to zero right before the wealth explosion. Stay in the game, because the greatest miracles in human history may already be lining up, waiting to knock on your door. And since this shift is so big it's easy to get lost again, I compiled everything into the Silicon Evolution Survival Manual. I've dropped it in the comments, click to grab it. If this helped you see the market and the future from a sharper angle, hit the like button so more people catch the signal. And subscribe to the channel, because when the wind changes next time, you'll be the first to know.